and honestly ran out of time. And so she wanted to step aside, and in her place, the city council has appointed Cassidy Olivares, who is sitting to my left. She is a resident with her husband, David, and her three children on Wickford Way. No, Cobblestone. Boy, I know my streets well. On Cobblestone. And while thanking Dr. Gunter for her service to our city, I'd like to welcome Cassidy to our group. The consent agenda, approval of the board minutes. Is there a motion to accept?
A motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Unanimously approved. I'm going to move the agenda around a little bit. These two items legally have to be separate because they have two separate owners of two separate pieces of property. However, the property is functionally working as one functionally. You have the owner of the property has vested the other owner of the property as his spokesperson. But for reasons of continuity, I would like to move, I'm going to move number 4 to number 3. So we're going to make number 3, public hearing, discussion of possible action of an application by Wayne Carter for a variance in the front yard fence of a property located at 125 Winston Lane, 5778 Block 2, Lot W, 129 feet of contrary to section 50-6 that fences in the front yard may not be higher than 3 feet. And if the board has no objection, and if Mr. Rapley sees no problem with this, I'm going to combine these two items as a single issue. So what we are going to be talking about is also the property at 123 Winston, which is functionally owned by the applicant's son, who is the co-applicant on this property. And so we're going to speak of them as one issue this evening. And if there's an objection from the public, if you're signed up to speak, please, talk about that objection with me then, and we'll see what we can do. But if there is no objection, we'll go ahead and open the public discussion. Mr. Carter, will you please explain to us what you'd like to do, please?
You mind?
Yes.
I can't hardly hear people that have a mask on. Good evening, and thank you all for your service. Just coincidentally, I sit in the same chair you did about 20 years ago. Sometimes it's a thankless job, but all of us good citizens sometimes need to pony up and carry the flag. Again, as Mr. Smiley said, my name is Wayne Carter. I reside at 125 South Winston Lane since 1946. A month before my wife passed away 5 years ago, the city bestowed upon her an Outstanding Citizenship Award, by which one of the items was being married for 49 years to the longest living resident in Castle Hills. So I'm not the oldest, I'm just the longest living resident since 1946. So I am also a bird dog guy. I've got 8 grandkids that used to come down and still do occasionally now, helping me train bird dogs. I have a Brittany Spaniel. The word spaniel was dropped back in the 80s. A fully trained pointing dog for quail, grouse, and that sort of thing is valued at about $6,000. I have a fully trained lab that belongs to my granddaughter, a black lab. Price tag is from $8,000 to $12,000. So when we had the winter storm, I lost 80% of the ligustrum hedges in front of my yard, 80% that were 15 feet high. You didn't even know there was a fence behind it from the street. So when I got tired of looking at ugly, I had a tree trimmer come out and cut those down, and then a stump grinder come and remove all the stumps. Well, now I'm looking at a 4-foot fence, and that dog or dogs that come visit me can go over that fence in a heartbeat. And any responsible pet owner knows that you need to have, we have a leash law. We have ordinance here in Castle Hills. You need to control that dog or dogs. And I'm not demeaning any other dog or breed, but a bird dog to a bird dog guy, it's like a child. I mean, you really love that dog for short duration. It's a shame that man and dog can't grow old together. So I want to thank our code compliance officer, Louis Samarin, for helping me put together my applications. And what happened was I wanted to build a fence down the side of my property between me and the 5 acres that the church used to own. So I went to the school, the new property owner, and I asked them, I said, look, in Texas, there are 2 sides to every fence. And if trees grow across a property line, the law of the land is both property owners must agree on what to do with the tree. And if they can't agree, then it goes in front of a judge. So he wholeheartedly agreed, said he would talk to the board of directors. And then that poor man came down with COVID, and my application died for almost a year. So when he got well, he called back. And speaking of COVID, I am over 2,500 on COVID antibodies. I had my booster shot, got tested, and man, they said I can go out and mingle with the crowd now. Anyway, I met with the owner, very nice gentleman, and he said, look, I own most of the trees and the brush. I'll take care of it all, and I'll split the fence with you. It took me 8 months to get an estimate during COVID. 8 months to get an estimate, mostly because of lack of manpower, that sort of thing. And then the price of lumber went up, and so I was going to eat that too. So I got ready to start the project to trim the trees to get them out of the way of the new fence. And made the mistake of asking my son, what do you and your sisters want to do with this land? Because it's 78, I'm not going to be around here much longer. What do y'all want to do? Well, Dad, why don't we just do this? Why don't I just buy that lot next door and you know who your neighbor is going to be? Because in the years past, for the folks that I don't know up there, you know, we have stood the test of parking lots and charter schools and that sort of thing next door to me, none of which materialized. So my son Cameron bought the lot, and he said, okay, Dad, fix it up so we can come down and visit. The dogs can run around. And when my boy gets out of high school, we're thinking about moving back to San Antonio, and we'll just build our home there. I went, oh, okay. So I came down to see Louis. He got me all lined out on what to do. So when I looked at the possibility of what to do and what is around our area, there are 12 residents on Foxhall Lane that have other size fences, that some of which I was part of the panel that approved them. I didn't want a 6-foot fence because that to me, that's too much of I'm 6'3". That's too much of a barrier. A 5-foot fence, most dogs see a 5-foot fence and they don't go over it. The other thing, the reason I chose 5 foot is because a 4-foot fence or a 3-foot fence, deer will go over it. And in the years past, I've had 2 sets of Bambis birthed on my front porch, 2 sets of Bambis that I had to carry out with mother stomping at me. When the deer come into the front yard in times of drought, they strip everything in the front of my house, some of which are very sentimental to me. I've got a 52-year-old plant that I got when my son was born. I've got a 27-year-old plant that was given to me when I first moved back home. So I want to protect those. And what I do in the wintertime, I move those plants into the garage and put up a nursery in there with timers for lights and heat. Deer are very special in our neighborhood. We have people stop traffic to watch the deer. And my best neighbors love the deer. I just don't want the deer in my yard. I mean, I raised a doe for 2 years. She came into the house and I fed it from the table, lettuce. So it's not that I don't like deer, I just want them in their place, okay?
Wayne, would you tell us, please, the height and the materials that you plan on using on your
Very
fence,
good.
please?
So here's my engineering on this. If you build any type of a fence that has wires up on top or bars or whatever, a deer going over can get caught in that. So my design is nothing more than wrought iron coming up. There are uprights that go above the horizontal, and I've given you all pictures of that. You don't want the flat part at the wrought iron at the top because dogs can jump up and grab a hold of that and then try to skimmy up. So you have it down a little ways. And then on the bottom, I learned something here 6 months ago called puppy pickets. Between the 4-inch uprights on the wrought iron, you have center pickets that go up about 18 inches to keep dogs from going through there. So we have masonry columns on the property corners of my property, masonry columns where my gate is that will have a rolling gate with a Lone Star of Texas emblem, just like it's on the front of our building here. And then masonry property corners on the lot next door to me for my son. I'm going to put a gate in there for lawn and tree and that sort of thing for the time being, but it will not have masonry columns until such time as the house is designed so they know where the driveway is. No use building masonry columns down when we don't have the house plan. So what you see in the front is 4 masonry columns, a masonry column in the center, my house, 2 masonry columns where my driveway is with a rolling gate. And then in front of Cameron's, it's just the wrought iron with wrought iron gate that can be, I don't want to, I'm saying temporary, but it's just used for the time being until such time as the house plans get drawn.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thank you.
There are 7 people that have signed up to speak during the public forum. For the sake of discussion, I'd like to ask a question. Anyone signed up to speak? Is there anyone to speak against this? Anyone to speak against it? Is there anyone with a burning desire to speak for it? Okay, in that case, I am going to close the public hearing if there's no other people to speak, and we're going to open it up for a motion. Mr. Squire, would you care to make a motion for discussion purposes?
Sure, I'll go ahead and motion to approve for discussion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been made and seconded. Would you come back up, Mr. Carter, please? And this way we can ask you any questions that the board might feel they want to ask. Mr. Squire.
Thank you, Chairman. Wayne, the plans that you so wonderfully explained, and I sure appreciate all the good detail, as I love details. They've been submitted to the city, correct?
Say again?
The plans that you described to us today have been submitted to the city. I just
Yes.
want to, I'm just trying to verify. City has reviewed the plans. Did the city have any issues with the plans besides the variance on the height at this point on both properties?
No, just other than the variance was required.
Okay, great. That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Justin.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Cassidy. I have a comment and a question, and since we have such a great crowd here that we can testament to this in the future. One of the reasons that I moved this agenda around and combined it, because I personally feel if we would have split these discussions, this board would have been faced with the challenge of approving a variance on an empty lot for a speculative fence without a home design. However, I do believe, and I support this thoroughly, in this being a combination and knowing that our ordinances, the way they are set up, when your son does decide to build, he will have to go through the entire process of home design and aesthetic design And if there's anything major varying, also for all of our clarifications, a variance on a property that we grant does not go to the owner, it goes to the actual property. So this would survive all of us. And we wanted to make sure we did this carefully and considered all the possibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
There has been a motion made and seconded. All in favor to approve this as applied, please signify. Thank you. It is unanimous. Thank you very much is there anything else before the board this evening? Mr. Squire, any
Chairman.
comments?
Chairman, and the November meeting will be the 29th, and we have 3 applications.
Yes, so talk to all your friends, board members, to be here, please. We need a little bit bigger group. Anything else for the board tonight? Mr. Squire, any comments?
No comment.
Justin, any comments? Welcome again, Cassidy, any comments? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.